So, I hope some of you have some points or questions which we'll happily discuss. Something that I thought was interesting strategically for the documentary is that this Friday is Black Friday. So they've been very intentional with when they've launched this doc. That leads me to a story that a friend called Melanie Rickey, who was an editor a while back, thought of. And it was a guy called Samuel Strauss, who 100 years ago came up with a term called Consumerism, and he wrote about it in an essay for The Atlantic. He was an editor. And it was compelling men to want things that they didn't need rather than just to make things that everyone needed necessary to live with. So that then, well, that was 100 years ago in 1924, and now we're here. It was a kind of a massive prediction. I'm pretty sure he wouldn't quite have known what we'd get ourselves in for.
Last year, and there was 150 or 60 billion garments just produced every year, and about 60 billion end up on that Chile
Atacama Desert.
I always wondered where all our clothes from shops, where it disappears because it's coming new.
France have already, because of the returns problem with fashion, so like things that aren't re-merchandised, and then, so like if I buy something and I send it back, that's not just resold. Usually it's cheaper for a brand to waste it, which is why you have massive waste issues. But France have actually put a ban on destroying unsold consumer goods. So that should cut down on waste, and eventually it will start to affect the capitalist organisation's bottom line, which is usually the way you'll make them care about what they do.
The way I think and the way I end up buying things simply based on how they're portrayed or how they're the ads. Like there are numerous times where I would have clicked on items simply because somebody said, oh, look at this, and I literally go to that link, end up in a basket, and end up purchasing something that I didn't need.
There was a study done last year on the Shein and Temu apps, which closely resemble when they basically plug your brain in and see how your brain reacts to those apps. It's extremely similar to gambling websites. So it's the same similar patterns that you get now from buying consumer goods, electronics and fashion. The same thing as going and playing roulette or spinning the wheel, blackjack and all that stuff. So that's a really slippery slope, and that scared me a little bit when I read that study. But yeah. There was, I think there was another Netflix. This reminded me of a Netflix documentary that came out, I think in 2022 or 2021, and I think it was called something like Clickbait, and it really went into like the psychology behind using social media and being online, and how it would track your eyesight and where it would hover over certain aspects, the data that it derived from all of that. You completely are bought. What they call dark patterns as well, where it's like, they'll induce a time-sensitive discount in order to make you believe, like, if you don't buy it now, you're never going to get it, which is the model that Zara essentially started on. They'd test products by putting it in stores, and if you wanted it and didn't buy it, the next time you went in, it was not there. And then Shein have basically put that on steroids, where they can test millions of items at the same time.
If we were to stop the consumption and stop buying, obviously Shein and all of these other brands are obviously putting out that number of clothes weekly, daily, whatever. How long do you feel like if everybody theoretically did that, would they stop the production? Because obviously if a month goes by and no one's buying the stuff, they're still making it in the factory, so where are they holding that? And then that will still be waste that nobody's technically claimed or paid for. So how do you think theoretically, if this kind of did happen and everyone decided to be sustainable, what would happen with all of that wastage?
I think ultimately it kind of happened with H&M, who notoriously had £1 billion inventory problem. So they had £1 billion worth of stock that was sat in warehouses, costing them money, and they couldn't shift it, they couldn't sell it, and they were paying rent on the warehouse, and it was causing loads of problems. I think the pathway that it would lead them down to is they'd either have to recycle it, they'd either get taxed heavily on waste, or if we all changed like overnight, just like that, we all became like stopped buying or bought 90% less stuff, the brand would simply just not function. It just wouldn't exist because they're no longer making capital. it's a problem I hope we have one day, but I don't know what that looks like. I think looking at how fragile fashion brands can be, even the big ones that you think are really super successful, a minor percentage change can have massive effects across their value chain and across their financial reports. So I think it wouldn't take long for the brand to be really, really hemorrhaging money and in a lot of trouble.
I'm a marketer for fashion, so basically I am the manipulator to tell you that you need to buy things, right? I'm there to sell stuff to you, I'm there to sell the dream, buy the dress, your life will change. I think there is a beauty in that. I don't think we need to eradicate that. My question to you was going to be, what is the detox? What's the first steps that we can all do? I mean, that was a challenge for my students, and obviously I had to win, so I did it. But it's changed the way.
It's really hard. I love fashion. I go to Fashion Week. I've seen thousands and thousands of items, and I look at stuff and I think it's so cool. I would love that. The changing point for me was being able to appreciate things that look great on other people that don't work for me. And I think when you're not when you are able to see things and not subscribe to them and just appreciate them and leave them alone, that changes your relationship with how you view fashion. I think most people in the rooms and on fashion courses can do that to an extent. Those people in that show look so fucking cool, I would look ridiculous in it, and that's fine, it's not for me. And you can then start to do that with trends. So like when a certain influencer is wearing a certain biker jacket and every fucking girl looks the exact same wearing that biker jacket, I can look at it and think, that's nice for them, cool, see you next week when they'll be wearing something else. And you can leave it alone. For me, it was the environment, easy. Environmentalism, the reason I gave up meat, the reason I stopped doing that, the reason I took public transport, it's environmentalism, which is fine, but it's not for everyone. Other people, it's money, and it's showing them that they can spend less, get more, and be more fulfilled with what they get. And for other people, it's like quality and craft and what they actually care about. My dad's an engineer, and he used to never ever throw anything away. And he would reuse and he'd turn it inside out and re-sew and just do everything he can to make things last as long as possible. Yeah, I think what I described is the large case point for people, probably the generation below me, whose the social desirability and the peer pressure is so massive that they care what strangers think of their outfits constantly every day.
People on TikTok, people on social media, onto how to style their own clothes and create like capsule wardrobe for themselves and personal style.
Yeah, I think back to like developing your own personal sense of style, stylists can really help with that, and styling outfits in a way where your clothes tell stories about who you are, rather than, and it depends what we want from fashion. Usually at the start we want people to be noticed by other people, rather than for us to feel safe and secure and like, this is me. So yeah, I'm Dr. Brett Staniland, I can say that because we're at university now. I got into the fashion industry through modelling, so about nearly 10 years ago now. I was literally scouted walking down the street with my brother, and within a couple of weeks was on sets and doing runways and working all over Europe. And that was kind of the first introduction to the fashion industry that I had. Before that, I was working in academia and thought I was going to be a footballer like most people my age. But from working on sets and going to shoots and stuff, I slowly started to think about clothing more deeply, about my role in the industry as like a front-facing model whose job is essentially to sell stuff to people. And our days went from shooting 20 looks a day to 40 and 50 looks a day. And that was when the cogs really started to turn for me about consumerism. Why are all these clothes being made? Why am I shooting so much stuff on just this one day as just one model? And who's going to buy it and where will it end up?